not understanding it yet, because it could have been my fault that I wasn't sort of.
I happen to have known him for several years, and I'm perfectly confident he doesn't have a fucking clue what a Gettier case is, any more than he has a fucking clue how to disprove the hypothesis of universal common ancestry, or to establish the truth of the hypothesis that there's an intelligent designer of life on Earth. I mean, he's a joke. The guy is a fucking joke.
Look, Jack, I've known you for a long time, and we've debated on many issues, and we disagree on many issues, and I'm always respectful, and I just don't see why on this issue, or with this person, it's worth getting into ad hominem attacks. You know,
it's worth getting into it because
he might be right or he might be wrong.
My mic working?
Bullying, right?
Can I use my mic working?
Or he might be wrong. But either way, it's irrelevant what his personality is. We're not interested.
Okay.
That's not an issue.
Liz, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My mic's working now. I attempted to add you, but for some reason your profile is not coming up. Can you add Darwin's deity to your circle so that I can PM you?
Yeah, I could do that.
And I'd be glad to explain the situation to you. I have another room open that will be free of trolling.
Yeah,
okay,
and
I can excuse me for talking.
What a Gettier case is there? Evolution false? Are you going to explain what a Gettier case is in the other room?
You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me.
Are you going to explain what a Gettier case is in the other room, Evolution false?
Okay. You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about, List. Can you add Darwin's deity to your circles?
Yeah. I'll do that.
Okay, hey, you need be sure to get back to me and let me know if he tells you what a Gettier case is when you go into his other room.
I just think we shouldn't turn this into sort of a personal. Let's talk. We're all here now. Why don't we talk about Gettier cases?
Okay, List, could you also do me a favor? I will send you a chat invite, and it needs to be accepted from Darwin's deity.
Yeah, I'm not that technical about these things.
Evolution false. Would you like to talk about Gettier cases here, Evolution false?
Add you here for some reason. I don't know why your profile's not showing up.
Would you like to talk about Gettier cases here, Evolution false, or maybe explain to us what's wrong with the hypothesis of universal common ancestry? And tell us a little bit about how there's evidence for the intelligent design hypothesis. Are you enough of a black belt to do that, Stephen J?
Yeah, List. Let me know when you've added Darwin's deity.
We're ready to entertain any arguments you have, Stephen J.
What's the user? I see your profile, Stephen J. Fooled. Is that the one I should add?
No, add Darwin's deity.
Okay.
I have a couple different profiles. This is one of them.
With all due respect and out of pure humility, and I humbly say this, for those of us that are not familiar with the what appears to be the feud that goes on between you and Darwin, it doesn't sell well, dear sir. And Jack, as intelligent as you are, and as persistent as this other guy Darwin is, and we see the faults and everything, it just doesn't sell well. Come on, give me a chance, Liz, before you bark at me, all right?
I was just coughing.
Serious. Oh, I thought you were, again, you know.
Yeah, no. I'll mute. I have a cough. I'll mute.
But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I would hope that you guys figure out some way maybe to bury the hatchet a little. I'm not asking for what a miracle, but it doesn't sell well. It's hard for people to come in and understand who started it, you know, which came first, you know, and people might
I'm in complete agreement with OG. Why don't we start from scratch, have an adult conversation. We can start with Gettier cases. You can each take turns explaining it, or I can debate Stephen J. Gould on it if you'd rather. I think and we can clarify the issue without any attacks on personality in either direction. Just pure intellectual conversation.
Oh, and by the way, Jack, I was listening. Just a minute, Darwin, and then I'm going to shut up and I got to go take care of Mom. But by the way, I was listening to some of your reels from a year ago, Jack, and you are the rambunctious one. It was interesting watching these just on my YouTube TV, and I think it's you guys have really arrived to a point where you've got this down to such finesse. But maybe there's a little bit of a catch-up game here involved with others of us. All right, take care.
Okay, well, all I was doing was asking Darwin's deity to show us that the hypothesis of universal common ancestry is either unfalsifiable or ad hoc or falsified or logically incoherent, or that he has he can cite a rival hypothesis that better meets those criteria and has greater explanatory virtues than the hypothesis of universal common ancestry, such as the hypothesis of intelligent design. So he would have to show us how there can be evidence for the hypothesis of intelligent design by showing us how that theory could be falsified, how it's not ad hoc, and how it generates specific predictive expectations that have been empirically confirmed. Alternatively, he could try to give some argument that those kinds of things aren't necessary for there to be good reasons to believe a scientific theory, right? Now, with respect to the Gettier cases, I was trying to get Darwin's deity to explain to us how, right, that doesn't count as how the example of the pasteboard sheep, the person who believes that there's a sheep in the field after seeing a pasteboard facsimile of a sheep, right, how that doesn't actually count as a justified true belief.
Well, that's
right?
a fair question, I think. So, Stephen, can you give Stephen a chance to respond to that?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing I would like more than for Stephen to respond to those questions. So I yield the floor to him to give us his arguments. Go ahead, Stephen.
List, you're probably not aware. I haven't spoken with Jack Angstreich. Excuse me for talking while you were interrupting.
We're not going to get the actual arguments, right? We're going to get a rehearsal of personal history rather than actual debating.
If I can mediate for a second, I think, why don't we start this as a purely intellectual, ignore the past. Let's start from scratch here, and let's have an intellectual conversation. Neither of you should reference the other person. You could think of it as an argument.
Okay, List. I'd like to finish speaking when I was speaking to you.
Okay. Yeah, but that was really rude. At least tell Jack that you're not going to respond to him.
Yeah, okay. Xbox, I was speaking and I was interrupted, okay?
Were you answering
Xbox, please don't tell me I was rude when I was interrupted.
Jay, okay? Were you answering the question that was raised?
This is exactly what I've been talking about.
Answering the question
obviously,
that was raised?
I'm going to be interrupted. So would you like to...
Jay, are you going to answer the question or not?
Okay. List, would you like me to explain the situation to you in my room, since there are going to be chronic interruptions?
Well, my answer to you is the same as what I just said to Jack. If the explanation is about personal history, I'm actually not interested in it.
You made a request of me, and I'd like to explain to you from my point of view what is going on here. Either you want to hear it or you don't.
Well, I'm not interested
Obviously, okay, good. Then I won't explain myself then.
Okay, but not on my behalf. I'm not interested in personal history. I'm interested in just...
Okay, good. Well, then I have nothing else to say.
So it doesn't look like Darwin's deity has any response to the objections that were raised.
But Jack, I'm not interested in your view of his personality either.
No, I'm just asking him whether he has any response to the objections. Are you seeing any, Yaniv?
Well, look, I think we should be talking about the substance and ignoring...
I asked a specific question, Yaniv. I asked him,
you're both
I asked him whether he had an argument against universal common ancestry. I asked him whether he had an argument for intelligent design. And I asked him how, in the case that was cited, right, of a person looking out their window, seeing a pasteboard facsimile of a sheep, and coming to the belief that there is a sheep in the field when in fact there is a sheep in the field, one that he didn't see, how that doesn't actually count as justified true belief. Now, do you see Darwin's deity giving any response? Do you see this dominant debater here giving any response whatsoever to those questions, other than to recount irrelevant personal history?
Why don't we give him a chance to...
Well, let's give him a chance. So, Stephen,
by saying it that way, you're goading him. Let's just give him a chance to discuss the issue, not your personal history and not his personal history. I know you guys... Sounds like you guys have a long personal history. I don't know where. Just why don't you guys can we just discuss the issue as if it didn't involve you two? Let's pretend that it's not Jack and Jack.
I'm totally happy to stick to the issues.
Yes, well, but don't speak to it as if you're disagreeing with me. You're very polite when I talk to you, and same thing for you, Stephen. You guys talk to me. You don't have to talk to each other. I'll be a mediator in between. So you don't have to communicate with each other. No attacks on either direction.
I'm happy to see Stephen J. answer the questions under any circumstances. We've been trying to get him to answer these questions for years. Just go to stupidcreationist.com. You'll see those same questions posed there.
Give him a spot to jump in there if he can.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Why don't we start? Let's leave the person, the two of you interactions. I'll ask the questions for each side, okay? Look, Stephen, we were talking the other day about what a Getty A case is. Can you maybe define how just to make sure we're talking about the same thing, can you describe what you are seeing, an example of Getty A case and your objection to it? And Jack, please don't interrupt him. Let him explain it.
List, as I tried to explain earlier, it's been my policy for over 2 years that I
he's not going to answer the
Jack
question again.
Jack, please.
This is precisely what we're talking about.
You're not answering the question, Stephen. You haven't answered the question or not.
Oh, Jack, he's talking to Liz. Just give him a chance, will you?
He's not answering the question. He's
Let
bringing up
him
the
say
personal
this first,
history
and then
again.
we'll address the issue of whether we can get a real conversation going, and what it would take to get a real conversation going. Okay, so what were you going to say, Stephen?
What I'm attempting to say, which I won't go into the history because you've said you don't want to hear it. I'll just tell you what my current policy is. I don't respond to anything that Jack Angstreich brings up in terms of my direction, nor anybody who merely repeats or parrots his questions to me do I respond to that as well.
Okay, so look, Jack, I think, Jack, you and I we disagree on a lot of things, but not the Getty A case, right? So are you comfortable with me talking to him without interruption about the Getty A case?
The objection that I'm bringing up about the Getty case is the same one that you brought up. So what he's saying is he's not willing to address that objection.
Well, but I didn't bring it up because of you.
He's also saying that if anybody
in my conversation with him.
Listen to me. He's also saying that if anybody asks him, right, how can the hypothesis of universal common ancestry, right, be objected to, right, and how can the intelligent design hypothesis be supported, that he refuses to answer that question because it's an objection that I have happened to raise, right? So he's not actually able to debate those issues, right? He's saying that whoever raises those objections, he's saying that whoever raises those objections, right, he won't actually answer them because I happen to have raised them.
Is that well?
So you can't actually debate the issues.
That's your claim, but I don't believe that to be the case.
That's what he just said.
No, he's saying that if someone is just acting as your as just a translator for you, he won't do it. But look, I had a discussion with him completely independent of you. It's not the same. I'm not even sure we have exactly the same objection. I don't, we haven't spoken about Getty A for a long time or debated it. So maybe he's comfortable talking to me if you're not involved. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so Stephen, would you be comfortable talking to me about the issue without Jack?
Sure, I'll be glad to discuss it in a room where there's not interference and where I get
what if Jack mutes?
I get guided. No, because he has a couple other people who follow him around who do what he does. For example, Philip. And there are one or two others who simply act as surrogates to interrupt and obstruct the flow of the conversation.
Yeah, you will mute also.
So I'll be glad to.
Who else would you like to mute?
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, let him speak because he's saying he's happy to talk.
Philip would be happy to mute his mic and listen to Darwin explain to us how the case that we cited.
It sounds like who are the people that shouldn't be in the room? Who are the people that shouldn't be in the room?
List. Yeah. The same thing happens every time I'm in the room with Jack Angstreich and his co-followers. Is no matter what I said, there's just obstructionism going on.
I'm agreeing to mute my mic.
So I'll be glad. You see, this is exactly every time I speak, I'm interrupted.
I'm agreeing to mute my mic if you actually stick to the issues, Darwin.
Well, you see, List, I have a room open right now.
Yeah, you see, we tried your room. And
you know what? I'm trying to speak. List, every time I've tried to speak, I get interrupted. Every time.
Go on. Sorry, I apologize. Go on.
I said, I'll be glad to discuss with you questions that you have that originate with yourself, right? Sure. That are not acting as a surrogate for Jack and his fellow stalkers. Sure. Right? They're well known for being stalkers and obstructionists, as far as I'm concerned, on Pal Talk, and as here as well. I'll be glad to discuss these issues in my room.
Well,
but when it is permitted, when I speak in the room, whenever he and his fellow stalkers are in the room, all they do is they don't merely object or attempt to refute what I say. They attempt to block me from speaking. There is 99% of the time interrupting me, talking over me, and using the power of the mods to silence my microphone when I'm speaking. Now, this is the first time, just right now, in a very long time since I've been here on Google Hangouts for a month or so, that I haven't been obstructed in speaking or being dotted. So I'll be glad to discuss any of these issues with you. I'll send you an invite from Darwin's Deity, and we can discuss it.
Okay, so can I respond now?
Sure.
Yeah. So my only, I'm happy to discuss it with you in a room that Jack and the other people that you're mentioning are not there. However, I do have a concern about doing it in your room because last time the rules you set out was that you were allowed to interrupt me and I wasn't allowed to interrupt you.
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
why was it that you
Jack, can I just
Hold on, Jack.
Can I talk? Look, when I said to you, when you complained about me interrupting you, I said, and we can listen to the recording if there's one, I said to you, well, but you're interrupting me, and you said, well, it's my room, I'm allowed to do that. So I don't want a room where you could just tell me that.
No, that's not what transpired. I said to you that when I tell you that I no longer wish to discuss a certain topic to you, that I set the room rules insofar as what the topic that I'm going to discuss. I did not say that I had the right to interrupt you, but you couldn't interrupt me because I control the room. That's not what I said.
Yeah, that was my memory. So that was one.
Okay.
We have a recording of it.
We differ on our recollection.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, as long as I don't really care what happened, as long as it doesn't happen in the future.
Okay. Well, I'll be glad to discuss it with you in my room.
Wait. So the only other issue is that if you did kick me out last time, so would you be comfortable discussing it in
you got booted from the room. You got booted from the room because I said I no longer, it was just you and I and one other person. I said I was no longer interested in discussing a topic because we had beat it to death, and I had told you probably no less than 10 times that I was no longer interested in discussing it. And you kept on persisting.
That's not what happened.
That's why you
in here, are you willing to discuss any of those topics? I mean, I'll use my mod control and mute as people start interrupting.
As long as the stalkers are present, no. Because every time, I'm trying to answer you. I'm trying to answer you. In every instance, when Angstreich and his fellow sock puppets or stalkers are here, they have ceded not merely to disagree, but to obstruct. This has gone on for 2 years on Pal Talk, and it is now going on Google Hangouts as well.
So what about the suggestion that was it Xbox?
One more time. If you wish to discuss these matters with me, you can join me in my room.
Well, but I am willing to discuss it, but I would like the playing field to be equal, not sort of feel like
the playing field is going to be equal. That's not a problem. You were not booted because you were disagreeing with me. I simply pointed out to you 10 times
he wasn't booted.
Excuse me for talking while you were interrupting.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Just when he asked you the question...
you see, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Just when he asked you the question, what is it about the example that doesn't meet the criteria of justified true belief, you bounced him out of the room. Right? Now, maybe you'd like to answer that question now. I'm happy to be perfectly quiet. And I'm sure Philip is happy to be perfectly quiet. Maybe you'd like to explain how that doesn't meet the criteria of justified true belief, Evolution Falls.
I've made my position. I think I've made myself clear. If you'd like to discuss this issue or other issues.
Jack, hang on. Darwin's, what if Univ brings like Xbox into your room and you give Xbox the ability to mod?
I can offer common ground. I mean, you can come. I can open up a room.
Okay. List. No. Well, you see, all too often,
here we go.
Stalkers are invited into the room, and then
no. I'll keep it clear. I'll keep it. I'll keep
one more time. I have a room open. If you wish to discuss,
I can't do it now either way. It would have to be later.
Okay, that's fine. Then we'll have to do it some other time then.
Yeah, but are you open to you're setting up terms? So I just want to counter your suggestions. Maybe we can come up with something that you'd be comfortable with. Is there someone that you trust enough here? Anyone who could be a moderator? And prevent you can
actually no. Anytime that I've been present in the room, in fact, every time I've been present in rooms where Jack Angstreich and his fellow stalkers are there.
No, we would prevent them from coming in.
Okay, well, you asked me a question, I'm answering.
Yeah, but you're answering a different question, so I want to clarify. I'm saying if we prevented, you can come up with a full list of people you don't want.
This has never happened before.
But we can make it happen. You can leave it as soon as it's broken.
Ben,
Watch him
the issue is not me being king of the hill and having mod controls. The issue is to stop those who are chronic stalkers, both here and on Talk, obstructing
we could do that.
conversation. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that. It'll be Yaniv Xbox. It'll be Xbox's room, so he'll be the neutral ground.
Well,
it'll be even you, and that's it.
Watch him construct excuses.
Hey, I'm one of the most neutral people in here as a third party.
Okay. Every time I've been in a room where he's present, and it includes the rooms.
More excuses.
That does not. You see, this is exactly okay. I'm done.
I'm gonna mute you.
I'm not going to keep on wasting my breath. I've made myself clear. Okay.
Well, but. So I've muted Jack. So I'm asking you, if my understanding, I want to make sure I understand you. Your main priority is that no one from this list should be allowed in the room.
No, I'm tired of the fact that there has never been a case where whoever's room it was or people who moderated the room stopped the obstructionism and the stalking. Okay?
No, that's what I'm offering to you.
Okay. Well, I've never seen it to occur. So one more time.
Sure.
If you wish to discuss these matters with me, excuse me.
Well, can you suggest a solution?
Okay, one more time. If you wish to discuss these matters with me now, you are welcome to join my room. Okay.
Well, I can't do it now either way. So it has to.
Well, some other time when I have a room open.
Well, but I'm not sure why you can't address my suggestion.
I have addressed your suggestion. My policy is now I will have a room open now and in the future, and if you want to discuss it with me, when the stalkers are in the vicinity, I'm going to operate in a room where the stalking does not go on and the obstructionism.
But
okay?
That's fair. I'm agreeing with you on that, but I'm saying can't we come up with a solution that provides that?
I have a solution. Okay.
Well, but that solution involves you being moderator.
That's right. And if that is unacceptable to you, then the conversation won't go on.
Here, I can offer even to that. I can give you a neutral ground on my room and give you both mods, so you can kick out. You guys can kick out whoever you want.
Xbox.
Yeah.
I have never had an experience. I have never had an experience, and I'm not merely referring to Nadia's room, but any room. Where the stalkers were prevented. So
that's what
Xbox.
Hold on. That's what I want to offer you.
One more time.
Yeah.
I'll make myself clear. Okay, I'll say it one more time. If you guys would like to discuss these matters with me, okay, then you're welcome to join my room. Okay.
Yep, and I'm gonna throw out an offer too that I can open up a room neutral ground. Okay. That I stay muted in.
Okay, good.
Hold on. One more time.
I've declined.
One more time. I was talking. I will offer the neutral ground that I'll stay quiet in, and I'll mod you, and I'll mod there.
I'm not interested.
And you guys can set the guest list.
Okay, good. I'm not interested. Okay.
Yeah. So let me ask you another question.
Sure.
It doesn't sound like he's going to be willing to go into a neutral room. So let me ask you another question. If I come into your room, can we agree on terms such that I know that I'm not going to be kicked out at any point, and that we both have equal rights to talk and interrupt?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay. Oh, that'll be great. That'll be fantastic. Then maybe you can find out, Yaniv, exactly why the case in question isn't a Gettier case.
Jack, you're not helping, Jack. You're not helping. Okay, so I'm okay with going into your room as long as there's equal grounds, meaning you're not taking advantage of your moderation rights to sort of make it unfair. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to come up with rooms, I'm fine with it being formal or informal, meaning you could say we each have 2 minutes.
EF thinks Yaniv is a white belt.
By the way, List, in our dialogue the other day, you were never muted.
That's true. No,
only at the end, the tail end of our conversation, when I told you, and I'm not trying to criticize you. Only at the tail end of our conversation, when I just said I'm no longer interested in discussing, and you continued where you were moved from the room. It was nothing.
I agree.
Just at the moment,
can I respond for myself?
Showed you didn't know what a Gettier case
Jack,
is.
can I respond?
Go ahead.
I'm not disagreeing with that, except we do have a difference in memory about the interruption comment. I don't know who.
We have a recording of it.
Well, if
We have a
someone could
recording
verify
of the
that,
whole
you
hangout.
could verify that. And if I'm wrong, I'll retract that.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't really care what happened. As long as we can come up with, it's up to you. I'll even leave it up to you, Stephen. You can decide whether you want it to be formal, meaning we each get 2 minutes at a time, or we allow interrupting but in an equivalent way. I'm fine with either side as long as it's equivalent. And because last time I think from the beginning you had pointed out to me it was your room, and I do think it's fair in general when it's your room for you to make those decisions. But I'm not interested in having a debate if sort of that's the situation. So if I'm going to,
I'm not. It's not that I'm keen, so to speak, of having my room, but because there is such widespread abuse in the atheist rooms that I've been in, that it's a last resort.
Well, isn't there another theist that we can use?
Can I just finish? It's gotten so to the point of absurdity that this is the only way that I can have conversations with some people unobstructed.
Would that be the same even if it was a theist moderator, like a Christian?
Well, all I can tell you is every room that I've been in, the stalking has not been suppressed. It's been tolerated, and in fact, not only has the stalking not only been encouraged, the stalkers are given mod controls.
Well, but you still bounced Yaniv from your room.
Jack, can I respond for myself? But the only thing that doesn't make sense though is, couldn't we agree on a room where as soon as one of them came in...
I told you what my policy was. I won't repeat myself again.
No, but you just made a claim about why it was.
Okay, and I told you, list one more time. I won't be redundant. I told you what my position is.
Well, am I asking you to repeat your position, or am I asking you to explain
okay,
the reason?
list.
No, he's saying he only trusts himself with the controls.
That's correct. Because
right.
I'm tired
of
the...
I understand why.
I'm tired of all the...
We all understand why.
Every single time I speak.
We understand why he needs those controls, so that when Yaniv asks the question, how is this not a case of justification?
Look, I apologize, Jack, but I want this to be focused. The Xbox, what I'm saying is, we could agree to the terms that as soon as one of them comes in, we would stop the conversations. Wouldn't that solve the same problem?
Right, yeah.
List, if you would like to join me either now or sometime in the near future, you're welcome to join my room for us to have conversations.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I think you start there, and
we'll start there.
I think our community's going to have to build bridges back with him.
You know what's going to happen when you do that. Once you ask him to explain how this is not a case of justified true belief, he's going to have to go walk his dog. Say, well, it was fun talking to you, Yaniv, but I have to go now. Maybe we can take that up some other time.
Well, look, right? I need to step away, so I'm going to mute myself for now. You guys can continue discussing. But Stephen, I'll join. How do I join your room at a different time? How do I know if there's a room open? How does that work?
Did you add me to?
Yeah, I tried messaging you. Did you not get a hello?
Let me look at the other. Hold on a second. Let me look at the other browser here. Hold on a second.
I don't really use this account that much. I'm not.
Okay, it says you added me here. Okay, so I will add you back here, and I'll send you an invite for PM. You have to accept it, otherwise I can't send PMs to you.
Yeah, again, I don't use Google Plus almost ever, so I don't. I'm hoping that I'll. Do you want to try it now? Just
okay, well, when you're on, it will send an invite, I believe, to your email. If you're on my circles.
Yeah, it should. And Yaniv, if you where I showed you how to message him, like how when you sent him that invite for a message, at the bottom of that list, so a lot of times if you're in the circle with someone, the invites will be at the bottom of that. If you just hover your mouse over the bottom of it.
Yeah.
It'll pop up a little bit and show you.
And it will also go to whatever email you have registered on here as well. And if you also look in my profile. Mm-hmm. There will be an indication with the room and the link below it as well.
Yeah, there's like 30 places that you can see where you've gotten an invite, but it's not unless you just happen to have the Google Plus open at the time. They're not really good on notifying you that you had an invite.
Yeah. Also, if you just open up Google Plus and if you click on the quotation marks in the upper right-hand corner, it should have a green camera icon on the right. That'll indicate that somebody in your circles is in a chat. Okay, and all you have to do is click on it and see if my name is there, and then it'll either indicate it's my room or someone else's.
Yeah, that's where I was telling him. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So does this? Let me ask the room here. Does this sound like a dominant debater to you?
Yeah, I'm going to mute myself because it looks like it's going to go back to personal attacks.
Yeah. Well, all I've been trying to do is find out how the example in question is not a Gettier case.
I have to go.
Right? Or how's not a case of knowledge on the Justified True Belief account, right? I've been trying to find that out for like an hour now. I've also been trying to find out what argument Darwin's deity has against the hypothesis of universal common ancestry and what argument he has for the hypothesis of intelligent design. Now, do you think a dominant debater, right, would hesitate to produce the answers to those questions, especially when Philip and myself have agreed to mute ourselves so that Darwin's deity can take all the time that he needs to answer those questions? Does that sound like dominant debating to you?
I think you have an agenda, Jack. That's the issue.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, Dex, this problem is well known on Pal Talk. Even the atheists recognize it.
And is it well known that you're a dodger on Pal Talk? Are you a laughingstock on Pal Talk for dodging questions? Evolution False, is that well known? Shall we go and ask some Pal Talk people whether you're notorious for having to walk your dog and go and make lunch when you're asked questions that you don't have an answer to? Is that why there's a page devoted to you on stupidcreationist.com that lists all the questions that you've been dodging for years, Evolution False? Are you notorious for that? Is there a page about me dodging questions, Evolution False?
Well, yeah, I mean, Darwin's is notorious for that already here on G+.
Yeah,
so.
You're notorious already for that here on Google Hangouts, Darwin. So who the fuck do you think you're kidding? We know exactly why you won't answer the questions, because you don't have a fucking answer. And the reason why you bounced Yaniv out of the room is because he embarrassed you when it became clear that you didn't fucking know what a Gettier case was. You said, oh, there are answers to Gettier cases. I don't take Gettier cases very seriously. So Yaniv said, okay, so explain to me about this. What's the answer to this? A guy looks out a window and sees a pasteboard sheep in a field full of sheep and concludes just on seeing the pasteboard sheep that there's a sheep in the field, right? And you said, well, that doesn't count as justified true belief because the guy's belief is false. His belief that there's a sheep in the field, wait a minute, his belief that there's a sheep in the field is true. And at that moment, you bounced him out of the room, right, Evolution False? Now maybe you'd like to explain to us how that isn't the case of justified true belief, dominant debater. Go ahead, Stephen. Oh, look at that. Look at that. The notorious dodger can't explain his answer to the Gettier problem. He can't explain how that isn't a case of justified true belief, right? And now, is that something you're going to explain when you have your discussion with Yaniv, dominant debater? Are you going to explain to us how that isn't a case of justified true belief, dominant debater? Yeah, look at the dodger. Look at the dodger trying to pretend this is about stalking when it's actually about his incompetence and his willingness only to dialogue with people he thinks are white belts, and his willingness, and in fact, his compulsion to run when the black belts come into the room.
You know, it's funny. When I first met Evolution False, I actually thought Angstreich was way too harsh on him. Because how is that not knowledge? Yeah, it's a great question, man. You know, it's funny. I was.
What's that?
Well, I actually, you know, when I first got on Pal Talk, I was actually very nice to Evolution False, but you know, he proceeded to call me a sock puppet because I read books by J.L. Mackie, like The Miracle of Theism, and, you know, his original paper, Evil and Omnipotence, right? And those are, you know, obvious objections to the free will defense, right? But of course, he seems to think that just because I learned something from other philosophers, that somehow that makes me a sock puppet of Jack Angstreich. Now, I don't know if it's...
Sock puppet thing is hilarious because, you know the famous example, maybe some people here haven't heard this yet, about the permanentize thing. This is why the sock puppet accusation is that Evolution False likes to make is totally phony, right? Which is that Philip had asked Evolution False to explain how there could be free will in heaven and no sin or evil in heaven if, as Evolution False said, without being able to produce an argument in support of it, that it would be logically impossible for God to create beings that always freely choose the good, right? Which was his explanation for why God permits evil, right? And so Evolution False, the notorious dodger, notorious for dodging both on Paltalk and on Google Hangouts, right, couldn't answer the question for days. But at some point, out of the blue, he said he suddenly decided to answer the question. And
Yeah,
he said,
I've never seen you act like this before. I mean, I'm just as a look. You know, it's weird. Why do you care
well,
about?
you and I don't know each other very well, Yaniv.
Well,
So-
but I've never seen you. I've never seen you talk against someone like that.
I'm just recounting an anecdote.
Why
So
hurt that?
let me finish recounting the anecdote. So all of a sudden, all of a sudden, Evolution False, out of the blue, decided to answer the question, and he put on his swaggering voice, sounding totally confident, right, and said, "Oh, well, that's easy. That's easy. It's because God permanentizes man's free choice of God in heaven, right? God permanentizes in heaven man's free choice of God. That's why people can have free will in heaven, but no sin or no evil." Now, let's leave aside the fact that that doesn't even make any coherent sense whatsoever. You know, if it was the case that God could permanentize man's free choice, then it would be possible for God to create beings that always freely choose the good, right? So let's just leave aside that it was pure nonsense. What struck me was, where the fuck did Evolution False come up with such a piece of nonsense from, right? Particularly with this word I had never heard before, permanentize, right? So I talked it over with Philip and Hal, and I said, you know what? He must have stolen this from somewhere, right? He must be a sock puppet for somebody else, right? And so I said, you know what, Hal? Just Google the word permanentize and Google the word God. I bet it'll come up right away. And so Hal Googled it. And the very first hit, right, had the exact same phrase that Evolution False had quoted. You Google it yourselves and you'll find it. I think it's on answers.org or something. I can't remember, but something with answers in the title. So in the website URL or the title of the page. So we were
Genesis?
Maybe it's Answers in Genesis, I'm not sure. We were just Google permanentize and God. I think it's the first hit. So we were just laughing hysterically to discover what a sock puppet Evolution False was. And so then Philip, next time he saw Evolution False, said, "Hey, Evolution False, you're a sock puppet. We found where you got this permanentize business from." And so Evolution False, he did what he tries to do, which is to play it cool. And he said, "Have you ever read the New Testament, Philip? I can see that you've never read the New Testament, and you have no familiarity with New Testament theology. If you had read the New Testament, and if you were familiar with New Testament theology, you would know that the solution that I gave is a commonplace in New Testament theology." And so I was like, "Oh, really, Evolution False? Oh, really? A commonplace in New Testament theology? So it took you a week of furious Googling to come up with an answer in the first place? You couldn't deliver that answer when the question was first asked to you? You who claim to be well-read in a large theological library were not familiar with this commonplace in New Testament theology when the question was first posed to you? But if it is, as you say, a commonplace in New Testament theology, it should be a simple matter for you to call up innumerable examples, right? Innumerable citations in the literature on New Testament theology where this solution to the logical problem of evil is cited, right? And guess what, you guys? Evolution False still hasn't come back from walking his dog to answer that question. So that's why this whole sock puppet accusation is just fucking hilarious, right? There couldn't be a more obvious parrot for arguments by William Lane Craig that Evolution False doesn't even fucking understand than Evolution False, right? There isn't anybody who's more of a sock puppet than Evolution False, right? When we asked him how he answers the Euthyphro dilemma, right? He didn't even know what the Euthyphro dilemma was, despite being well read in a large library devoted to a large library of a large Christian library that he's collected, right? He didn't even fucking know what the Euthyphro dilemma was, and then after a few weeks of furious Googling, one day he said the Euthyphro dilemma was a false dichotomy. And I said, oh, really? It's a false dichotomy? It's a false dichotomy, evolution false? So what's the third option, evolution false, right? And we're still waiting for evolution false to come back from walking his dog to answer that question, right? So the whole sock puppet thing is just a joke. Now, evolution false, if you'd like to explain how you're not a sock puppet, Philip and I will be happy to mute ourselves and listen to you explain that right now.
Well, you know, the thing is...
I hear crickets. Does anybody else hear crickets?
Yeah, I don't hear much from him. But the thing is, right, I mean, Angstreich, you noticed that I wasn't hostile to evolution false when I first met him.
Absolutely. Neither was I. I only got hostile with evolution false when he realized that I wasn't going to let go of the objections that I had, because he used to try to brush them aside, saying, well, Angstreich and I are buddies, you know, we both like Macintosh products, you know, I really like the guy, but I think everything he asks is a bunch of rabbit trails, a bunch of philosophy-speak, you know, and I don't answer those kinds of questions, right? And I said, well, you know, evolution false, I'm beginning to think you're not being completely honest there, that the reason why you're not answering those questions isn't because they're filled with philosophical jargon or because they're irrelevant, right? But rather because you don't actually have any answer to the objections that I raise, right? And that was making it hard for evolution false to do what he likes to do, which is beat up on weak atheists, right? So he changed his tune. He started to turn on me, right, and see if he could find ways to discredit me by digging up irrelevant stuff about my personal life that he furiously Googled on the internet, right, that had nothing to do with the actual issues that were being debated, as a way as he hoped to remove me from the debate, or at least discredit me in the debate. So once he started to do that, I said, you know what, I'm going to take my gloves off, right, because this guy is clearly a fucking asshole, right? And from now on, I'm not going to treat him politely. I'm going to point out what a fucking fraud he is, who can't defend a single thing that he believes.
Yeah, I haven't actually ever seen him have a substantive conversation.
Of course you haven't. The guy is a fucking charlatan, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything. He can't even fucking read a book. Of course you haven't seen him engage in a substantive discussion.
Well, Dex, by the way, that is the thing that we found when you type in God and permanentized, right, Dex? The thing that you posted.
Yeah, the thing that you posted there is it, giving in. I knew it had the word answer in it.
Oh yeah,
giving an answer.
I hope you listen to Yan a little bit, Jack. I respect you a great deal, and the thing is that you kind of have, whether you realize or not, de facto, a position of some leadership. I'm not talking about your crew. I'm talking about now over here on the Google Plus, and it is a little confusing to those of us, even though the history is indeed rich and probably verifiable, and the grudge is deep. It doesn't play well, and actually, even to listen to you, this calm, modulated voice that you have that is so filled with reason and wisdom. It becomes a different voice, almost one of there's like bad blood, and
yeah, I agree, and it's not typical of Jack, right? It's
represent Jack.
Well, you and I don't know each other very well.
In a sick sort of a way, he's winning some psychological.
No, I'm agreeing with
some psychological gain.
Look, I think it's not typical of Jack. I'm kind of surprised because I've seen him disagree with a lot of people, and we've had a huge disagreement for many years about intentionality. You know, and even with me, right? He's never. I assume your experience is the same, OG. When he disagrees with people, he usually doesn't get this emotional about it. And I don't think,
was I emotional when I entered this discussion and I pointed out to Nadia, right, that evolution. And see, look at what he's doing right now. Look at what he's posting in the side chat, right? Now, evolution false. Rather than post a YouTube video of me, because I assume that's what it is, I didn't even click on it, but you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, right? Rather than post a YouTube video about me, evolution false, maybe you can post a YouTube video explaining how, in the example cited, that doesn't actually count as justified true belief. Or maybe you can post a YouTube video, right, explaining how the hypothesis of universal common ancestry is unfalsifiable, ad hoc, or falsified. Or maybe you can find a YouTube video that explains how to falsify the intelligent design hypothesis. But this gentleman here, who describes himself as a dominant debater, right, can only post YouTube videos about me, right? He can't post any YouTube videos that actually defend any of his claims. Now, when I answered this discussion, I was perfectly calm and reasonable. I said, well, the interesting thing about evolution false is he doesn't seem to be able to give us a clear answer as to what his objection is to the hypothesis of universal common ancestry. And he doesn't seem to be able to offer any defense whatsoever for the proposition that the intelligent design hypothesis is likely true and that there's good evidence for it, right? And what did he do? What did he do? Rather than, like the dominant debater he professes to be, right, jump in the ring, coming out swinging with all kinds of arguments to show that the hypothesis of universal common ancestry is a flawed hypothesis, and the hypothesis of intelligent design is one that meets all the criteria of a good scientific hypothesis, right? Instead, he started to call me a stalker. This person, right, who sent Philip, a 19-year-old kid, PMs threatening him, right, just because Philip was asking him embarrassing questions about his views on Paltalk. And Philip, please post a link to the PMs that Evolution False sent you.
Yeah, but
right,
that's my point is.
So
you might be right about all these qualities.
I start to raise my voice just let me just finish one thing. I start to raise my voice when I reasonably and calmly ask Evolution False a question, and rather than answer the question, right, he attempts to evade serious discussions of the issue by bringing in irrelevant personal history as a stratagem, right, to discredit me and avoid having to deal with the fact that he can't defend anything that he fucking believes.
I understand, and I understand how that would be frustrating. If what you're describing, if he is actually a bully, I would find that very frustrating as well. But it's still, I don't think it's too, even if it is true that he's a bully, better to just not engage with him than to have these kind of, because
I'm not going to sit around and let this fucking asshole, right, molest other people in here without retaliating. Why should I let this guy have a free hand?
Retaliate intellectually. Why? I
do retaliate intellectually. What I've said multiple times in this conversation is I'm still waiting for an argument.
Look, OG,
to explain to us what's wrong with the hypothesis of universal common ancestry. How there can be
respond? I really have to go, so let me respond.
Go ahead.
Look, OG, I think, sees the same thing I'm seeing. We've both seen you debate a lot of people on different issues. We've debated on a lot of issues. I know a little bit about what Darwin's talking about because Philip and the rest of the people agree with you about the intentionality issue, and it is overwhelming sometimes to talk against 5 people.
He's posting more videos about me, right? Thinking that somehow that's going to explain.
Let me finish.
His inability to defend his position.
Let me finish. So what I'm saying is, I think OG and I have both experienced you, and we like it better when you stick to just, if you want to be tough with someone, do it on a purely intellectual basis. Do not address their personal...
I wasn't the one who brought up personal issues. It was Evolution False who did. I was the one who said, Evolution False, can you explain to us what's wrong with the hypothesis of universal common ancestry? We're still waiting for an answer to that question, right? He wouldn't agree to any terms whatsoever, right, to answer that question.
I'm going to, look, I can't keep arguing because I really have to focus on something else, but my recommendation would be, even if he ends up being I haven't seen him. I've only had one interaction with him, so I don't actually know if he's a bully or not.
Stick around. It'll become very obvious very quickly, and we can post many videos that he's had on Google Hangouts. Well, you can see him bullying people.
Okay,
everybody here has seen it.
I've seen it. He can be an intellectual, or I don't know whether the intellectual bully is the right word, but he has a guided script that it seems like he tends to swashbuckle with and kind of cut through people and focus on one person in the room despite another more knowledgeable person wanting to intervene. He really rejects them and will even kick them out of the room if they quote-unquote interrupt. But those are his tactics. But the thing that's a little disheartening, Jack, is that he's trying to keep the button under your skin. I got no beef with it.
Who did I kick out?
He senses
You
a
kicked me
white
out.
belt.
You kicked me out of Nadia's room one time when you had the mods.
No.
And then you kicked a couple of people out of your room yesterday.
No.
Or the day before.
Og, I've never kicked you or anybody else out.
Oh, here we
Okay,
go.
if I'm mistaken,
okay,
it seemed like a clear cause and effect because...
Og, I'd like to respond to your accusation. Og, I'd like to respond to your accusation. When List and I were there alone, I think there was one other person, we had talked for an extremely long period of time, and I told him on many times I was no longer interested in discussing a specific topic, and he wouldn't stop. And I have no... May I finish, please? May I finish?
Well, that's not accurate, though.
Okay. Okay. You and I have a different recollection. Now, Og, may I finish without being interrupted, List?
You already told the story 30 minutes ago.
Finish responding to Og. Okay.
Right, but you already told your story,
okay,
and you already told the story.
Okay, I'd like to finish without being interrupted.
That's why to welcome Jen.
Now,
I just didn't see the point.
Other than my removing List at the tail end of our lengthy conversation, you said that I regularly boot people out. I don't have mod controls in these rooms, so I don't know what you're referring to.
You booted me. You booted me, Evolution.
I don't know what you're...
I'd like a chance to respond because I have to sit through that. I don't think you're being fair to me. We disagreed upon, and you asked me to stop talking about truth. Then, when we were talking about Getty cases, which was not about the question of truth, it was a question about knowledge, you kicked me out about that. We hadn't talked about Getty cases for a long time. You agree on that?
List, you and I obviously disagree. As I said to Og, that after a very long conversation, I forget what the specific topic was. It was not the Getty cases, but you were removed from the room because I told you that I was no longer interested.
It was about the Getty cases.
Excuse me for talking while
it was about the Getty
exactly
cases. Why lie?
What goes on nonstop. The interruptions.
Why lie?
So,
we have a recording of you.
Your accusation that you have observed me.
Excuse me, Evolution False. Why lie?
This is
you
what's
have
going
a
on.
recording. We have a recording of you. We have a recording of you.
Og, you cited that I have ejected people on a number of occasions.
We have a recording.
That has never happened, Og.
We have a recording of you kicking Yaniv out of the room just when he was asking you how, in the example cited, that did not count as an example of justified true belief. That's when you kicked him out of the room, when he said, well, I'm not seeing what the problem is. The belief is true and the belief is justified. And you said, right, that the belief was false. What's false about the belief? In the person who sees a pasteboard sheep in a field full of sheep and has the belief that there is at least one sheep in the field. Maybe you can explain that now, dominant debater. I turn over the floor to you, Stephen.
So, as I was saying, Og, before I was interrupted, you have never been ejected by me, nor have you observed me eject a series of people. Okay? So you owe me an apology. That's a false accusation.
I would apologize if there's a remote. We'll continue this conversation even in private, if you like. But one of my first experiences here was when you had the mods in Nadia's room and booted me because I heard a satisfactory there. Now
I didn't boot you.
Okay, then I had what I felt was evidence that you did. Now the other day in your room, I know that you muted two people that were invited to your room or booted. It may have been muted, but I saw that it was that you had muted them in your discussion because.
Okay. Well, first of all,
that's not booting, though, and I stand corrected.
Are you retracting your claim that I have booted multiple people on multiple occasions?
I didn't say more. You know, if I say 3 people on 2 occasions, is that multiple?
Okay, I have never bolted. I'm talking about 3 times. I have never booted. Other than the conversation yesterday or the day before yesterday, after a long and lengthy conversation, because I said the conversation was done. And I said I was no longer interested in it. The bottom line is, you said you had observed me booting people on more than one occasion. That's simply false.
This conversation is not very fruitful.
I'm sorry, Darwin.
Okay.
Because I'm unfamiliar with all the devices that are operating in this G Plus, and I could be mistaken, but I felt that was I sincerely felt that you booted me in one of my first experiences in Nadia's room when I thought that you had mods.
No, Nadia. Okay, Nadia has, as I recall, to the best of my memory, I don't recall Nadia ever giving me mod controls.
Then that settles it, and I apologize.
Well, in fact, she did give Evolution
Nadia,
mod
I think only on one occasion.
And you used them to boot me from the room. Okay. She gave them to you once, and you used them to boot me from the room. Now, isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that interesting that you used them to boot me from the room?
None of us really care about this drama, honestly. At the end of the day.
Yeah, so, I'm trying to stick to the issues. I'm just trying to get Darwin's deity to
Jack,
explain to us how that's not a Gettier case.
No, Jack, you're not. This is a personal thing for you.
Did you hear me ask Evolution False the question how that doesn't count as a case of justified true belief? We're still waiting for an answer to that question, right? So let's ask that question again.
Jack, yes, we did. Right after your 45-minute long diatribe about how evil Darwin's is.
I didn't say evil.
Now, look, we're all aware of his character flaws here on G+. It came about rather quickly what his shtick is. And I'd just like to point out that I think you're a very smart guy. You have a lot of great ideas, and your time would be better spent educating people here as to how to answer his scripted tactics. I think that's the way to go. Rather than attack him personally and try to take him down as some sort of nefarious character, I think it would be better if you sort of try to interject and help people understand how he's misleading them or misusing terms or just not.
I always do that. I think I always do that. I never leave his arguments
unexamined. I appreciate Jack's passion too, and his sense of right and wrong, and also wanting to stick up for his friends. There's some things there that go a little deeper than we can see, but I'm so with Dex on that it would benefit us and felt a lot better to hear that wonderful, magnanimous, calm, well-modulated Jack.
The bottom line, to quote Evolution False, right? The bottom line is we're never going to find out how, in the case cited, right, that doesn't count as justified true belief, right? Doesn't matter whether it's in a room that Evolution False has mod controls or not. We're never going to get an answer to that question any more than we're going to get an answer to the question, what's wrong with the intelligent design hypothesis? Is it unfalsifiable? And if so, how? Is it ad hoc? And if so, how? Is it falsified? And if so, how? Is the intelligent design hypothesis one with greater explanatory virtues? If so, how? How can it be falsified? We're never going to get an answer to any of those questions, right? Everybody in this room knows that. Is there anybody here who thinks we're going to get an answer to that question? Any single one person in this room? There's 10 people in here. Let's leave aside Darwin's deity, right? Is there anybody here who thinks we're ever going to get an answer to those questions from Darwin's deity, a.k.a. Stephen J., a.k.a. Evolution False? Is there anybody who's going to stick up for him and say, you know what, I think if he just goes into his room, we'll get an answer? Is there anybody who thinks that? Because if so, I have a bridge to sell you.
Well, I shouldn't think that, but I mean, I understand